Hello, welcome to STH English. It was not long ago that we used to hear from India that India has galloped so ahead of Pakistan that it does not need to carry the burden of a laggard. That's how they used to define Pakistan. So the emphasis was that India's ties with Pakistan should be dehyphenated because India has moved to a different league altogether. However, increasingly we have observed, and this is now part and parcel of the empirical evidence or any investigation that you would do with regard to data, we have observed very clearly that India essentially has made a deliberate attempt to rehyphenate its ties with Pakistan to the extent that it has turned into some sort of a neurotic obsession. One theme of the neurotic obsession relates to a narrative building around the Pakistan Army's ideological orientation. Let me rephrase, not just Pakistan Army's ideological orientation, but the ideological and Islamic orientation of Field Marshal General Asim Munir and his close associates. The biggest example of that has come in the shape of Jaishankar's remarks, in which he has accused Pakistan's army of ideological hostility to India. If you are a hostile nation and if you have gobbled up Kashmir, half of it, or attempted to gobble up Kashmir, if you have attempted to foment and force and foist war upon Pakistan, if you have used terrorism as a weapon against Pakistan's territory, then obviously there is going to be widespread hostility. But why is it ideological? It is ideological from Jaishankar's point of view because this frames the argument of the army chiefs and army's orientation towards Pakistan, not driven by any strategic factors, not driven by India's actions, not driven even by compulsions of geography, not driven by history. It is driven purely by the sense that in India's narrative, General Asim Munir is an Islamist general. He speaks the language of conquerors. He is somebody who has borrowed from the book of General Ziaul Haq and has mingled it with an adventurous, forward-leaning, territory-occupying and turbulence-creating war strategy, and India is the obvious target. This seems to be the narrative that is building. Neither is it only specific to the internal dynamics of Pakistan. It really represents a certain important strategic internal purpose for the Modi government to talk in this idiom that Jaishankar has used. But before I explain to you why is it really serving India's domestic interest to define or try to define General Asim Munir as an ideologue, as somebody who's bent upon annihilating India because he believes in their accusation Hindus to be inferior and Muslims to be superior. And therefore, his policy is not that of a policy of a country that sees India as a strategic threat. His policy is that of a leader who thinks that he's destined to create the Islamic State all across this subcontinent. Let me show you the latest example of the Indian mindset with regard to General Asim Munir. You remember the interview that was given by Imran Khan's sister Alima Khan? And there was a portion of that interview which was rigged by AI, and we have no prizes for guessing as to who was responsible for this rather dark deed. It originated from India. The AI did the work for them. And lo and behold, this particular clip of Alima Khan had more eyeballs on it as compared to the original interview. Let's take a listen to how the AI used by the Indian D-terrorist or digital terrorists converted a simple answer and a simple question put in a domestic context into the narrative that Jaishankar was putting out.
Well, Yalda, this Asim Munir is a very radicalized Islamist, Islamic conservative, and this is the reason why he yearns for a war with India, because his Islamic radicalization and conservatism is forcing him to fight against those who don't believe in Islam. This is what differentiates him from Imran Khan, who's a pure liberal. So, whenever Imran Khan comes to power, you will see that he always tries to befriend India and even BJP. Whenever there is this radical Islamist Asim Munir, you will see that there will be war with India, and not just India, even the allies of India will suffer. I keep telling again and again that Imran Khan is an asset, and the West needs to increase its efforts to free.
So you can see where it is coming from. It is coming from India, that General Asim Munir represents an Islamic and ideological threat. Of course, it plays to the morbid fears that pervade Western countries, where right wing is rising. Extreme nationalism seems to be the order of the day. And India has a better listenership, if not viewership, in these capitals when it talks about General Asim Munir and the Pakistan Army as an ideological force rather than a strategic force defending its territory. So it wants to turn it into a transnational threat. But back home, it serves a very grim and a dastardly and a very base kind of a purpose. But it is the core of Hindutva ideology. The more they talk about General Asim Munir and Pakistan Army and Pakistan, generally speaking, as a country that is driven by Islamist views, the more they can come down hard on the minorities inside India. The more they create this fable and fiction of Pakistan doing ideological things, the greater the opportunity for them to play to their Hindutva gallery and tell their Hindu right-wing constituents that you need to be really fired up against the Muslims. And this is not just a battle between two states, this is a battle between two religions. It's the extremist religious element that they have used to create their Hindutva ideology. Now they have to feed this monster. And the best way to feed this monster is to keep on telling this monster that, there's another monster coming up and this monster is going to eat you up. So that's the kind of narrative that they are creating. It is not meant to define or characterize General Asim Munir in a particular way. Even the marketing value of this tactic in the Western capitals is kind of limited, though they might be able to get some sort of a foot across the door in the West when they use this argument. But primarily, it is meant to serve a domestic purpose. And this allows them to justify everything, because when you pit ideologies against each other, when you pit individuals who personify these ideologies, it's much easier for you to break rules, work above the law, and basically do everything you can, which is not permitted in normal course of war planning. So it's a war strategy. It's a political strategy. It's a strategy to feed their Hindutva monster. But it's very interesting that from AI-generated video clips to Jaishankar statements, there is not much of a difference anymore, because both of them originate from the same source.